10 hours. That's all that stands between Naomi Carter and the moment her entire life either collapses or detonates. 10 hours before the vows. 10 hours before the man who stripped her of everything, her home, her career, her savings, and the last 11 years of her life, seals a brand new chapter with a woman who doesn't know the half of what he is. 10 hours before the world watches Marcus Carter remarry like he never buried someone alive in the process. But here's what Marcus doesn't know. The woman he invited to his wedding out of pity. The woman he assumed would show up in a borrowed dress and borrowed courage just to watch him win again. She doesn't arrive in a borrowed anything. She steps off a $62 million Gulfstream G700, engine still humming, wearing no designer label, no jewelry, nothing flashy. Just a gray fitted top, a black skirt, and an expression that could silence a stadium. In her right arm, a sleeping infant. In her left hand, the tiny fingers of a toddler who looks exactly like his father. And his father isn't Marcus. The red carpet stretches toward the altar. The guests freeze. And Marcus Carter, standing at that altar in a $4,800 tuxedo, goes completely, utterly still. Trust me, you won't believe what led to this moment. Naomi gets the invitation on a Tuesday. Plain white envelope. No return address. She almost throws it away. Her apartment is a studio in Southeast Atlanta, $840 a month, and the pile of unopened mail on her kitchen counter is mostly medical bills and collection notices. She has $213 in her checking account. She is 34 years old. She has not slept more than 4 hours in a row in 6 weeks. She opens it anyway. You are cordially invited to celebrate the marriage of Marcus Darnell Carter and Priya Anand Mehta. She reads it 3 times. Her hands don't shake. That surprises her. 3 months ago, just hearing his name on the radio made her chest cave in. But something is different now. She sets the invitation on the counter next to the formula tin and the stack of unpaid hospital receipts, and she doesn't cry. She thinks, because here is what the invitation doesn't say. Marcus invited her on purpose. She knows this the way she knows the layout of a room she once lived in by memory, by pattern, by the specific cruelty she has spent 11 years learning to read. He didn't send this invitation as an oversight. He sent it as a message. Look at how far I've come. Look at where you are. Stay down. Marcus had always been a man who needed witnesses to his victories. What he never considered, not once, not for a single moment, was that she had spent the last 14 months building something he could never take from her. Something that wasn't ready when he filed the divorce papers. Something that wasn't visible when he contested the custody agreement and paid his lawyer $47,000 to argue she was emotionally unfit. Something that hadn't yet arrived when she sat in a courthouse hallway at 28 weeks pregnant, alone, eating vending machine crackers because she had skipped lunch to save $6. But it was ready now. She picks up her phone, she makes one call. It lasts 47 seconds. And then she writes 4 words in her journal, I'll be there. Watch. Here is what Marcus Carter took from Naomi in the space of 14 months. He took the house, a 4-bedroom in Decatur that she had co-signed, that she had decorated, that held the sound of her laughter in every wall. His name was first on the deed. His lawyer made sure the judge knew that. He took her career, or tried to. She had been a senior compliance analyst at Meridian Financial. Marcus, whose brother sat on the board of Meridian, made a single phone call. She was restructured out on a Friday afternoon with 18 minutes of notice and a $3,200 severance check. She was 31 weeks pregnant at the time. He took her confidence, or tried to. 2 years of quiet, surgical erosion. You're too sensitive, Naomi. You're not strategic enough. You embarrass me at dinners. Nobody takes you seriously. She didn't recognize what was happening until she was already standing inside a version of herself she didn't know. But here is what he could not take. He could not take the 4 a.m. sessions on her laptop, building the compliance consultancy she had always put off because he said it was a fantasy. He could not take the first client she signed, Dr. Angela Osai, a pediatric cardiologist who needed a healthcare compliance audit and paid Naomi $4,400 for 6 weeks of work. He could not take the second client, or the seventh. He could not take the referral that reached a man named Theodore Ashworth III. And he absolutely could not take what happened when Theodore Ashworth III met Naomi Carter. But we're not there yet. If you know a woman who has been told she is too much and not enough at the same time, subscribe, share this story with her right now. Not later, right now. Because what happens next is exactly what she needs to hear. Theodore Ashworth III is not what you picture when you hear the word billionaire. He is 41. He drives a 6-year-old Range Rover that needs new brakes. He wears the same 3 rotation of navy blue sweaters to meetings that would intimidate heads of state. He built his wealth not through inheritance but through Ashworth Compliance Group. A $2.3 billion regulatory consulting empire, he started in a Memphis studio apartment at age 26 with $800 and a printer that jammed every third page. He found Naomi because Dr. Osai told a colleague. That colleague told a law partner. The law partner told Theodore. He called her on a Wednesday at 8:14 in the evening. She was nursing a newborn in one arm and reviewing a 47-page SEC filing with the other. She answered on the second ring. "I've looked at your work," he said, without introducing himself. "The Meridian audit you filed before you were let go. The compliance restructure you drafted for the Osai Pediatric Group. I've been in this industry for 15 years and I've seen 3 people think the way you think. I want to know if you're interested in a contract." Naomi looked down at her sleeping son. Her other son, 13 months old and already walking, was asleep in the next room. "Depends on the contract," she said. Theodore laughed. It was the laugh of someone who was not used to being told depends. He loved it. Over the next 6 months, the contract became a partnership. The partnership became trust. And the trust became something neither of them had planned for, a quiet, steady, unspoken understanding that 2 people who had both been underestimated their entire lives had finally, somehow, found each other. He never pushed. She never pretended. When she told him about Marcus, all of it, the divorce, the custody battle, the Meridian call, the courthouse hallway, and the vending machine crackers, Theodore sat across from her at a kitchen table in her $840 apartment and didn't say a single word about fixing it. He said, "What do you want to do about it?" She told him. He nodded once. "I'll have the jet ready by 6 a.m., he said. The wedding is held, of all places, at a private aviation facility 40 minutes outside Atlanta. A venue Marcus chose because it was ostentatious, because it had a runway, because only a certain kind of man thinks an airport makes a romantic backdrop. He does not consider, not for a single second, that a runway works both ways. Naomi's heels hit the tarmac at 10:47 a.m. She carries 7-month-old Eli in her right arm. His face is pressed into her collarbone, half asleep, eyelashes like tiny brushstrokes against his cheek. With her left hand she holds Caleb, 20 months old, curly-haired, already walking fast enough that she has to remind him to slow down. He looks up at her, eyes wide with the simple thrill of being somewhere new. The red carpet stretches 40 yards ahead of her, toward the white arch drowning in garden roses, toward the rows of guests in their summer formal, toward the altar where Marcus Darnell Carter stands in a $4,800 tuxedo with his jaw unhinged. The whispers start before she reaches the first row of chairs. She does not look at any of them. She looks at Marcus, only Marcus, the way you look at something you once feared and now simply need to finish. His face moves through 7 expressions in 4 seconds. Disbelief, recognition, confusion, anger, something close to panic. Then, and this is the one that matters, a flash of something that can only be described as shame. He knows, she thinks. He knows exactly why I'm here. His new bride, Priya, 29, standing to his left in $11,000 of ivory silk, turns to follow his gaze. Her smile does not know yet that it is about to change. A murmur runs through the 140 guests like a current through water. Marcus takes 1 step forward. Naomi. His voice is controlled barely. This is. I was invited, she says. 3 words, no volume, no heat, just fact. She takes her seat in the 3rd row, the seat his invitation specified, settles Eli against her chest, and takes Caleb onto her lap. And she waits. What Marcus doesn't know, what none of the 140 guests know yet, is that Naomi is not here to make a scene. Scenes are for people who need the room's attention. She doesn't need the room. She needs one person in the room, and that person isn't Marcus. That person is Leonard Ashworth, Theodore's father, a retired federal judge who co-chairs the Georgia Bar Association's Ethics Oversight Committee, and who has been sitting quietly in the 2nd row on the groom's side for the last 22 minutes. Leonard Ashworth, who 3 weeks ago received, through proper legal channels, a 94-page dossier on Marcus Carter's role in the wrongful termination of Naomi Carter from Meridian Financial, including a recorded phone call, recovered through discovery in a separate shareholder lawsuit, in which Marcus's brother explicitly discussed handling the Naomi problem before she delivers. Leonard Ashworth, who looked at that dossier and said, with the calm of a man who has ruled on 3,000 cases, "This will not stand." Marcus doesn't know Leonard is here. He doesn't know that his own guest list, built by his event coordinator, included a last-minute RSVP from L. Ashworth that Marcus assumed was a college friend of Priya's family. The ceremony begins. The officiant speaks. Naomi holds her sons and watches. And then, quietly, without drama, with the specific precision of someone who has done this before, Leonard Ashworth stands up, reaches into the breast pocket of his jacket, and hands Marcus Carter a folded document. If you've ever watched someone get away with something they should have been held accountable for, stay with this story. Because the next 60 seconds of what you're about to read is the moment every person who has been silenced has been waiting for. The document is a notice of civil action. $2.1 million in damages, wrongful termination, intentional interference with employment, emotional distress during a protected medical period, pregnancy. And at the bottom, a line that makes Marcus's hands go visibly still. Meridian Financial has agreed to cooperate fully with the plaintiff. His brother made a deal. Of course he did. When the SEC started asking questions about the shareholder lawsuit, Marcus's brother did what men like him always do when the walls close in. He protected himself. The guests closest to the altar can see Marcus's hands. They see the paper. They see the color leave his face the way water leaves a glass that's been tilted too far. Priya leans toward him. "Marcus, what is that?" He cannot answer her. Naomi does not look at him. She is looking at Caleb, who has found a flower on the ground and is presenting it to her with the full ceremony of a 20-month-old who has just discovered that flowers exist. She takes it. She kisses the top of his head. She breathes. This is what winning looks like when you've done it right. Not loud, not shaking, not a single word wasted. The efficient pauses. The guests are absolutely silent. 140 people in summer formal, not one of them breathing. And then Theodore, who has been standing 20 yards back, leaning against the jet staircase with both hands in his pockets, watching with the patience of someone who has waited 6 months for this specific Tuesday, walks forward. He doesn't rush. He doesn't perform. He walks the way a man walks when he has already decided, and the only question remaining is whether the room will catch up. He reaches Naomi. He sits down beside her. He takes Eli from her arm so she can use both hands. And he looks at Marcus with an expression that says, without any words, I know everything. And so does the Bar Association. And so does the SEC. And so does every person at this wedding who is going to talk about what they saw today. Marcus Carter, for the first time in his adult life, has nothing left to say. The lawsuit settles 11 weeks later. $1.85 million. Not the full $2.01 her attorney advised her to take the settlement, get the money moving, stop spending energy on a man who deserved none. She agreed. Not because she was giving up, because she had already won the thing that mattered and the money was just proof in writing. Meridian Financial issues a formal public statement acknowledging the wrongful termination. Marcus's brother resigns from the board. Marcus himself is named as a correspondent in the SEC shareholder inquiry, a process that will take 18 months and end with a $340,000 fine and a permanent bar from serving as an officer of any publicly traded company. The wedding does not happen. Priya Mehta, to her credit, leaves the tarmac within 20 minutes of the paper being handed over. Her mother, watching from the front row, puts an arm around her and walks her back to a waiting car without a single look back. Naomi doesn't watch any of this. She is already back on the jet. Caleb is pressed against the window, watching the runway slide away below him, saying up, 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 up in the specific delight of a child who doesn't know he is watching the last chapter of something terrible, becoming the first chapter of something extraordinary. Eli is asleep, still, completely unbothered by the magnitude of this Tuesday. Naomi leans her head back against the seat and closes her eyes. Theodore reaches across and takes her hand. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't have to. 18 months later. Naomi Carter, now Naomi Carter Ashworth. A name she chose not because she needed it, but because she wanted it, stands at a podium in front of 800 people at the National Compliance Leadership Summit in Chicago. She is not nervous. She spent years being nervous in rooms like this, talking herself down, reminding herself to take up less space, to speak more softly, to hedge, to qualify. She spent years being the second voice in every room she entered. She is the keynote speaker tonight. Behind her, on a screen the size of a building face, is the logo of Carter Ashworth Compliance Partners, the firm she built from an $840 apartment, 2 babies, and a Wednesday phone call that lasted 47 seconds. The firm that now employs 34 people. The firm that was named by Forbes as one of the 25 most innovative compliance consultancies in the country. Caleb is 3 now. He calls Theodore Dada, a word that arrived, unrequested, on a completely ordinary Thursday evening, and made a man who had never cried in his adult life leave the room for 4 minutes to collect himself. Eli just turned 19 months. He has his grandfather's eyes, Theodore's father, Leonard, who retired from the Bar Association last spring and now shows up every Sunday morning with orange juice, and the newspaper and teaches Caleb how to play checkers in the specific, patient way of a man who has decided this. is what he wants to do with the rest of his life. Marcus Carter, he exists. That's all she knows. That's all she needs to know. She steps up to the microphone. The room goes quiet. 5 years ago, she says, a man handed me an invitation to his wedding. He thought it would remind me of everything I'd lost. She pauses. He forgot that I never lost it. He just made me fight to find it. The room holds that sentence for a moment. Then it erupts. If you made it to the end of this story and felt something, the anger, the hope, the exhale when she walked back onto that jet, then you already know someone who needs to hear it. Don't let this story stop here. Send it to her. The woman who is still in the courthouse hallway. The woman eating vending machine crackers and trying to believe it gets better. Your share could be the exact moment she decides she's not done yet. Naomi's story isn't a fairy tale. It isn't luck. It isn't a rescue. It is what happens when a woman decides that the worst thing that ever happened to her is not the last thing that will ever happen to her. If this story moved you, if it made you angrier, braver, or just a little more certain that the ground can hold like this video, not for the algorithm, because it sends this story to the next woman who needs it, the one searching at 2 a.m. for proof that the other side exists. Subscribe to this community, not to follow, to belong, because every day we tell the stories of people who were written off and wrote themselves back in. And if you take nothing else from Naomi's story, take this. You are not what he left behind. You are what you built after. The jet is waiting.